Good morning and happy Monday. I'm Sana and I'm so glad we get to spend some of our Monday morning together. This is Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. Every Monday morning, I'm joined by experts from across the country who are investigating our most pressing social issues and common curiosities. Over the next hour, you'll learn about their inspirations, motivations, and of course, what they know about the world around us. So grab that cup of coffee and get ready for a fun and insightful conversation. So, y'all, one thing you should know about me is that I absolutely love food. I love to cook food. I love to eat food. I love to feed friends, family, strangers. It's all about food over here. As a child, I was told I was a happy eater. And I think that should be in my bio because that is me. I'm a happy eater, but there's so much more to food than what we may think about. You know, it's not just walking into the grocery store, and it's not even just maybe the crops that we see growing right on the side of the road or at our farmers market when we go to get our groceries. So to talk more about food and especially the science behind food, I am joined by Allie Manning. Allie Manning is a food scientist and entrepreneur. After earning her degree in food science and technology, Allie worked as a food scientist for nearly a decade before launching Umami Food Consulting. Allie is also the Levitt Shell Professionals Board Chair of Equity and Inclusion. She's an Ag Launch mentor and Black Restaurant Week and Feed the Soul Foundation Advisory Board member and consultant. And you may also know Allie from her Food Science for Kids program. We're going to get into a lot of this and more this morning. Good morning, Allie, and welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing so good. You know, I do love Monday. So it's so exciting for us to be chatting today and to be chatting about, again, I just have to say it again, one of my favorite topics, food.
Yes, yes. You know, someone told me a long time ago, you'll always have a job because people have always got to eat. And that is so true.
Yes, I love it. You know what? Someone should have told me that, and then maybe I could be in some sort of food related industry. But, you know, for now, I'm just, a food enthusiast.
Good enough.
Yes, absolutely. So let's just jump right into it. Now, you are a food scientist and formally trained in food science and technology. Now, what is food science? Let's just start there.
Yeah, so food science really considers the chemical, biological, and physical properties of food. So that's in relation to production, manufacturing, growing, and even storage. So we do all kinds of things from research to creating new products and innovative products, determining what's on the market and using consumer trends to create these products essentially.
Wow, there's so much in there because I think we often just think about food like, okay, what's for dinner, right? And not, you just described like so many aspects of food science. So we're going to get into some of those different components in a moment. But first, can you just tell me, because I think people might think food science and often think like the nutrition side. So is food science and nutrition, is that the same or how is it different or does it overlap?
Yeah, so food science and nutrition overlap. They are slightly different. So nutrition is all about the nutrients of the food. So the study of the nutrients like carbohydrates, fats, fiber, those types of things. So it's going to get into that. And also it considers the topics like obesity or malnutrition, even food insecurity, whereas food scientists, once again, we use chemistry, biology to create new food products and even reformulate existing ones. So they're slightly different topics for sure.
Okay. So I know you mentioned this idea of new food products. So now I feel like we're getting real futuristic. Like, what does that mean, new food products?
So years ago, kombucha was not a thing, right, on the market, right? So we typically analyze what's on the market, what consumers are already enjoying, what culinary chefs are doing, we kind of evaluate what's going on in the media to create new products based on trends and also based on consumer behavior. So for example, gluten-free wasn't necessarily a big thing years ago. And now it's become a thing because, we have, diseases where people cannot process gluten. And so new food products can come from different regions. It could come from, a need for a different type of food products. For example, like Impossible Burgers, people are not always interested in meat byproducts. So how can we feed a growing population using plants? And so Impossible has found a way to create a burger that is delicious from a plant source. So that's kind of the definition of a new food item based on what's going on in the consumer trends.
Okay, I see. And it's so funny because some of these or what were at one point new food products kind of now just seem like just a expected everyday integrated part of what we eat. So you mentioned that some of these new food products might be, I guess, maybe inspired or following trends that maybe chefs are introducing, that maybe consumers are becoming more interested in. And so I'm wondering, what is that interplay between all these different kind of entities in regards to food? Like, who is really driving the trends, or how do some of those decisions get made as to what new food products might be created?
Right. So once again, we're looking at the media, we're looking at consumer behavior, also industry experts. So food scientists, we're driven, we're always looking at data, we're always looking at what's going on out in the industry. And many times you can see what's going on simply from TikTok. You can see that, people are creating innovative food items simply from TikTok. And so we're watching a lot of those different behaviors. And I think as food scientists too, we know the psychology too. We eat with our eyes. So consumers are looking at flaming hot Cheetos and are like, okay, this is a bright red spicy snack. I want to have it. And I want to have it on popcorn and chips and chicken and everything else. We look at mukbangers even. I know I do look at mukbangers for trends. And so we use what's going on outside of our industry and what's going on within our industry, as well as what's going on with growing patterns in agriculture to help guide what's going on in the industry. And it's always so interesting because it changes so much. Science and research changes so much. And sometimes the funding that you get for the research that you do also plays a role in what's being produced. If a company is trying to grow a different type of seed, in order to sell it, they're going to do some research on it, and then some testing and begin to market it. So there's a lot that goes into it, but generally it's consumer driven, what sells, and then what the experts have to say.
As I was listening to you kind of describe how all these different folks kind of influence food science, I was definitely thinking about how much potential profit, right, might be factoring into this. And you mentioned it when you said, if folks are trying to maybe grow certain types of seeds and maybe introduce, new crops, and then how then will those crops be translated into food products? So it's definitely a lot playing into what we end up seeing at our grocery store or on a menu.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. So, so yeah, definitely interesting.
Yes. Now you mentioned something that piqued my interest because I will tell you, I love chips. That's my favorite snack. And then you said flaming hot Cheetos, and I love, all the spicy hot chips, the hot fries, all of
Yes.
that. And I think that's such a good example of kind of like a food trend. Whereas at a certain point, we didn't have flaming hot
Right.
Cheetos.
Right.
And you couldn't go into a restaurant and get flaming hot Cheeto mac and cheese or
Right. 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 Exactly. And so I think it's so fascinating how many times our food system can be cyclical. For example, like butter is bad, then margarine became a thing. Then now people are going back to butter and, fat replacements. So there's a lot that goes on in our food system based on science and based on opinion. We have a lot of food bloggers and writers who say a lot about what's going on in our food system that is not always factual. And so I think as consumers, we have to really educate ourselves the best way we can. And what I say, when I'm out eating, I eat things in moderation. If I want a snack that may be considered unhealthy, I'm going to eat it in moderation. So me being a food scientist doesn't really shift what I eat. I have my preferences, but I always just say eat it in moderation because you can't avoid all the additives. You can't avoid, you can, if you're an extremist, but otherwise you really can't avoid it. There's so many other environmental factors besides McDonald's chicken nuggets. So every
Yes.
now and then.
Yes, that's such a good point. And I'm glad you said that because I think we can start to feel overwhelmed by the amount of messaging we get around food, around, don't eat this, don't eat that, these additives. If you see this on a package, don't eat it at all, and that can be overwhelming. I even find myself even currently kind of going through like a little food crisis where, I was watching something that was talking about, fish, farm raised fish, and how that's not healthy. But then you think about fish that are caught, in the wild and all of the contaminants and pollutants that might be in the water.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, well then what do I eat? Then you think about veganism and then all of the ways that some food is being made into other food.
Right. It'll drive you crazy if you let it. So, just think about what's nutritious, healthy, and fun. And I think that that's the gist of how I consume.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good rule. Yes, nutritious, healthy, and fun. I love the fun part of it. Absolutely. So I think that is going to help me myself kind of pull myself out of this, out of this like overwhelming, right? Too much information. Now, could you give us an example of a new food product that maybe you helped create and then the process behind that?
Okay, so let me think. Um, a few years back, years ago, when I was in the industry, our division worked in dressing, sauces, and mayonnaises. And so one of our clients was Sonic. And so we worked, and Dairy Queen, but Sonic, we worked on developing a match for one of their sauces. So that's always fun. You essentially get a match or you get their product in. And what's fun is about these types of tests, you actually get the product. You actually get the chicken strips or the chicken nuggets or the wings. I had done a study for Hooters and got all these wings in. McDonald's got all these hash browns. So there's so many fun aspects of being a food scientist, like eating all this stuff. But then you talk about food waste because we can't give it away. I think there have been some new legislation around donating food now that have been updated. But back then we were constantly wasting food. But yeah, so we created sauces. Essentially, we would get a match. I hope that makes sense. We would get product in from the company and try to match it. So we would match the flavor profile, the consistency, the color, the taste. That's the flavor profile, and then do an evaluation. And so we have some standards that we have, some forms to fill out, and then we taste and we continue to reformulate until we get the best match. And so that's kind of a fun product that I worked on.
I love sauces. So
Yeah.
that sounds exciting to me, and especially the tasting part.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's one of the most interesting things of it all. Building flavors using what you have. So
Mhm. And speaking of building flavors, I see we're going to bring it back to chips because that should just let y'all know that that is my snack of choice. Because now, when you go to a grocery store or a convenience store, wherever, there are so many different flavors
Mhm.
of chips. And sometimes I wonder, how are y'all getting these flavors onto this potato chip? A potato chip is not supposed to taste like this. How are y'all? How? Are you able to speak to a little bit about how these flavors are created?
Yeah, so you have a few different standards. It really does depend on whether you have a Lay's or a Pringle. They're formulated totally different ways. And so you have a flavor carrier. So you've got like an oil, then you have your seasonings. Generally, your seasonings come from vendors like, well, I can't give examples right now, but then you kind of just layer the flavor. And then you add particular additives in there. It may be an MSG or it may be a citric acid to give you a tangy, sour note. And so you continue to build the flavor. Then you add something like a maltodextrin, which is an additive that helps with um, declumping and also spreadability of this product, like being able, like for example, when you're looking at a flaming hot Cheeto, right? This flavor all the way around it. There's no clumping. It's not any, bald spots, for lack of better words, on your Cheetos. I hate to keep referencing Cheetos, but that helps with the spreadability of the product essentially. And so that's generally the steps to creating flavors for chips. And there's so many types of flavors, you couldn't even taste them all. And they're actually flavor scientists or flavor chemists that can pick out notes and identify them to create whatever you want. So there's an art to it all. There's an art to food science for sure.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. So let me ask you this then. Are food scientists responsible for how deliciously addictive certain foods are?
Um, should I plead the fifth? I don't know. There are some things that create addictive characteristics in food. Yes, yes. But I'm not owning up to it, okay? I'm just gonna no comment that one.
Okay, see, we were getting to the good stuff there. Because look, I know that it's certain chips. It's like, oh, this one was a little salty, and then the next one, I'm like, oh, that was a little sweet, and now it's like my taste buds are like, we want more, we want more. The taste, the texture just keeps me, I guess, excited, and like I have to continue to eat.
Yes, it's a bit of all of it. The salty, the sweet, the umami, the MSG, which is umami essentially. It creates that addictive taste. It really does. So hey, it is what it is.
Okay, see, all right, y'all can read in between the lines of that answer. Oh my goodness, you think you just like those chips because you like them? No, they were engineered to be that addictive. Okay.
Moderation. Okay.
No, don't tell me moderation when this food was created to make me want some more. That's fine. That's fine. That's why when I go to the grocery store, I say, don't go down the chip aisle. Don't do that. Because next thing you know, it's 5 different flavors of chips in my cart. And then I'm looking at them in my cabinet like, no, don't eat them.
Well, follow the serving size on the back. Follow the serving size.
Yes, follow the serving size. Eat those 4 chips, and then put the, put the bag down. Eat those 5 M&Ms, and then put the bag down. All right. Well, I'm not going to press you too much about that. I don't want you to have to give away any secrets. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. This is Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. I'm Sana, and I'm here with Allie Manning, a food scientist and entrepreneur. And of course, we're talking about food science. And I want to get into another aspect of kind of the work that you do, which I know is a lot related to the community, sustainability, and also working with other food entrepreneurs as well. So I want to kind of get into that aspect of some of what you do. So let's start with your own food consultancy that you created, because I know you're not in the food science industry, I guess, proper maybe, and you have your own company, Umami. So let's talk a little bit about that. Now, why did you decide to create your own food consultancy?
Yeah, so interesting enough, I was fired. So late August 2019, I was set free from my job. I call it set free because I was in such a negative headspace and really depressed creatively and just as a whole. And so I had chatted with some girlfriends of mine. I said, what do y'all think about me starting a food business consultancy? They're like, go for it. You know, they're all entrepreneurs. And so I was up early one morning. The name came to me and it stuck and it worked. And so I began to work the plan, lean on my resources at Epicenter, friends that I knew in the industry, and it just evolved. And it has been such a blessing. I love helping fellow food entrepreneurs. I generally specialize in product development, nutritional analysis, regulatory aspects of the business, and a little bit of branding and marketing as well. And so I've kind of niched down and figured out what my specialty is. And I love it. I really do enjoy it. So it was something that I hadn't really planned to do, but I spoke it into existence and it happened. So.
I love that. And I love that idea of, being able to get that freedom, that creative freedom, but also something that you really enjoy, because there's nothing like having a career that you feel very fulfilled by. And it sounds like Umami is that for you.
Absolutely. I always wanted to do meaningful work, be immersed in the Memphis food culture, and I am in so many different ways. And it just feels good to have an impact in this way, and feel valued. I've been able to use what I've learned in the industry to really help food businesses and food entrepreneurs. So it's definitely where I'm supposed to be.
Yes, I love it. Now, could you give us an example of a company that you've worked for or worked with, and maybe how you have helped them in their food entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I have a few local clients that I absolutely love and some nationwide, but Pop's Kernels is one of my favorites. Tamiko and her husband are fantastic. They came to me looking for some help with packaging and nutrition labels, as well as shelf life testing. So how long can the popcorn last? I know that popcorn is fantastic, so it generally doesn't last long in this household. So so I was able to help them get some packaging and labeling design, and help with identifying the shelf life of their products. So they have scaled up. Tamiko is working on her storefront now, and I'm just so excited for them.
Yes, I love Pop's Kernels. So it should probably not come as a surprise that I also love popcorn. Again, just staying with that kind of salty, crunchy snack, right? I love popcorn. I really like Pop's Kernels. And I'll tell you why. You mentioned that shelf life aspect. And kudos to you, because I got one of the city tasting boxes and their popcorn was in it. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised because, you're thinking popcorn, oh, it's going to be, soggy and not that crisp crunch for long. But that popcorn was absolutely delicious and crunchy.
Yes.
Crisp.
Yes. Their quality is impeccable, and the way that they process their popcorn is why their popcorn stays fresh so long. So I'm just excited for them and their growth. They have been featured and have had partnerships with Amazon and so many other companies. So I'm excited for her.
Yes, that is so great. And now let's say for folks who are listening who might be food entrepreneurs, or maybe have just a vision, right, for a food business, at what stage would they benefit from your consulting?
So they would benefit from my consulting services, I would say either early on or midway through their product development. So I've worked with caterers and restaurant owners before that are interested in products. And so many times folks may not have, they may have the recipe, but they don't have the nutrition label, or they may have a product, but their branding may be a little bit subpar, or they might be looking to find or build out a kitchen, commercial kitchen, and need some regulatory help. And so that's when I come in. So I would say in the beginning stages, I can help there. And then in the middle, generally, once you're towards the end, you're kind of already past those hurdles. So I kind of help food entrepreneurs really tackle those issues beyond the kitchen and help them find the resources that they need. So
Got it. And it's so important to have that set up in the beginning, a firm foundation, because that does set the tone for kind of the direction of your business as you continue to grow. So,
right.
and just thinking about food science again, food is not just the end product, what we're eating, but it's so many other components behind the scenes that your average consumer, isn't thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you're also involved with Project Green Fork. And so I think folks who are listening from the Memphis area may be familiar with the name Project Green Fork. I know I have seen before like little stickers in restaurant windows about Project Green Fork. And now, could you give us just an overview of what Project Green Fork is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Project Green Fork really is all about sustainability within restaurants. Restaurants have an issue with food waste many times. And our city has an issue with food waste, quite frankly. And so we help food entrepreneurs or food restaurants specifically get connected with organizations that are focused on sustainability. So how can they compost? How can we get them connected to Atlas, which is the major composting company here in the city? Or how can we get them connected with Get Green Recycling, which helps them to recycle all of their cardboard and plastic items? So, we get them connected with So Fresh and So Green, which is all about using green products, cleaning products. We get them connected with Eco Products, who has compostable to go and utensils. And then we also help them come up with strategies for eliminating or reducing food waste in their businesses. And so there are like 6 pillars that they go through to become members of BGF. And then we also have some different value adds when it comes to discounts and things like that, media partners, social media highlights. And so it's really great to be their program consultant for Project Green Fork so that we can increase visibility. It was a program that was really well known years ago, but kind of fell off because of, just not having someone to lead the program. And so now I've come in to figure out how we can breathe life back into the program and get more members involved. Another thing about Project Green Fork, it had been more of a niche membership organization, meaning Midtown, ones who lean towards sustainability. And so with my reach, I hope to get more Black and people of color who own restaurants involved in Project Green Fork, because sustainability is for everyone. And I think it's just a bit about awareness and knowing that we exist and that it's possible to have sustainable practices in your business.
Absolutely. I feel like sustainability is becoming maybe more of a buzzword, or people are more keyed into issues of sustainability through a variety of different kind of outlets, especially as we think about our not only our city, but our world's future moving forward, and how key sustainability is going to be to whatever future what that future might look like. And you said something interesting when you talked about food waste. And that's not just the actual food product waste, but that is all the other components as well.
Right. That's, looking at how can you reduce water and energy. But of course, or reduce your portion sizes. Encouraging people to take to go where, or, that type of thing helps with eliminating food waste. And also purchasing, when you're purchasing from a distributor, making sure that you're keeping an eye out for, or doing enough data analysis, I guess you could say, to determine how much food you're actually preparing, how long the fish lasts, how many, plates you're selling. All these things help you to reduce food waste.
Got it. Now, you talked about food waste as it pertains to, of course, restaurants, right? But is there something as kind of individual households that we should be thinking about when it comes to food waste, or kind of issues of sustainability in our own lives as well?
Yeah, definitely. Implementing some of those same strategies, like if you're going grocery shopping, maybe not get the big box of lettuce, that goes to waste at the end of the week because we ate out twice. Get the smaller box of lettuce, just monitoring how much you're purchasing, looking at the shelf life, determining if you should freeze some of those meat products, will help to eliminate food waste. Or you can hire Compost House, which is a part of Atlas, as a way to utilize composting, or begin doing composting, as a form of food waste reduction. Oh goodness, no, food waste reduction, so that it doesn't go to the landfill. There are. Yeah, I'm a huge supporter of the farmers market. So supporting your local farmers, and that'll help them reduce food waste as well, by just supporting them and purchasing local. So, or donating food. I don't know. There's some policies around that if you're if you're a household versus a business, but there's some options for that as well.
I love it. I love it. So those are some really good practical tips that we all can be implementing when we're thinking about food waste, when we're thinking about sustainability. And then also, I think it's just really good to understand why businesses might be using the compostable to-goes or cutlery, which might be a change from what we're used to. And we might think, oh, this is weird, or we don't like it as much as we like, the feel of the plastic, right, containers or cutlery. But understanding that using the compostable items is helping not only businesses, but also our environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing, really quickly, 901 Save the Food is a part of our organization, as Memphis Transformed, as a platform. And one thing that we encourage folks to do is use those food items multiple ways. How can you use asparagus 3 ways? How can you use, ground beef a few different ways, and so that it doesn't go to waste? That's another way to be innovative and try some new things out as well.
Yes, I love the innovation. All right. Now, you mentioned, of course, supporting local, patronizing our farmers markets, all about supporting local, and especially thinking about our, local and regional farmers as well. And I know that one organization that you are involved with is Ag Launch. And so could you tell us just a little bit about what Ag Launch is?
Yeah, so Ag Launch really helps farmers and food entrepreneurs in areas of technology, getting them the resources that they need from expert level. So I work with farmers and food entrepreneurs, honestly, to do the same things that we've mentioned. You know, we as food scientists, we have the ability to evaluate soil composition and growth patterns, and in order to improve productivity of the farms, um, and ultimately improve the food supply.
Mhm.
Our goal when working with farmers is maintaining and expanding the food supply, essentially, making sure that they can grow what they need to grow to meet the demands, but also so they can sell whatever they need to sell and get connected with restaurant owners that may want local produce. And so that's kind of my role with Ag Launch as a mentor pro.
Mhm. I love this idea again of just, talking more in depth and learning more about the whole, I guess, food process, right? Or growing agriculture process. Because again, I think so often it's easy to take for granted everything that had to happen in order for there to be food at the farmer's market or in the grocery store and ultimately, on your plate. And there's so much that we take for granted, especially for folks who, we grew up in the city. We weren't connected necessarily to the land in some way. We didn't grow up on a farm. So it's not kind of just in our knowledge base, right? So we can take for granted how much really goes into the process. And you mentioned a few things. Thinking about how, as a food scientist, you can think about the soil, right? The nutrients in the soil, what crops these might be supportive of, or if there are additional things that need to happen to prepare the soil. But I'm also wondering too, because you mentioned it earlier as we were talking about how food scientists might be influencing crops or creating crops that maybe are, I don't know, healthier or grow faster or adaptive to whatever conditions. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so GMOs are not foreign. They've been around forever. Although people consider them so bad, I get it. But honestly, I'm pro GMOs because of, once again, food supply. You have some crops are created to minimize pesticides or pesticide usage, or be bug resistant or disease resistant. And so, or to be, create more efficient crops. So there's a lot that goes into it that we assist with as food scientists, and we do a lot of research around it. Um, and it's important research. It's important when you're looking down the line, okay, how can we create enough cotton or enough corn to feed our planet? Because not only do we have to feed humans, we feed animals. And so there's a lot of research that goes on around that, and there's a lot of technology, drone technology, satellite technology, to help to create more efficient, healthy crops. And so, yeah, it's interesting. There are agriculture scientists, ag scientists, and animal scientists have really cool jobs. I just can't do it. Like, it's not my thing. I like food more so, and humans, but definitely think that it's where young people need to actually consider going into. If you're in food science, and I'm going to plug food science anyway, but if you're a young person that's creative, likes math, likes science, likes technology, food science is a great way to go, because you're able to touch so many different things. And depending on your industry, you can create packaging for a brand, or you can create new products, you can do research, there's so much that you could do as a food scientist. So yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it sounds so fun. And again, food, like
Right.
as you mentioned before, there will always be a job because we will have to eat. What it
Mm-hmm.
is that we're eating or how that might look, will change as the technology changes, but we will need food.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. And I think it's, what you said, is so important around GMOs. Again, so some people, automatically hear, something about genetically modified foods and think automatically, oh, that's bad. But, farming has always been responsive to technology. It's just the technology now is very different than that romanticized version of farming that we might have in our minds.
That's right. That's right. You have someone build a garden out there in their backyard and challenge them to keep it up and maintain it. It's not as easy as it sounds. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. And so creating more opportunity. I also think there's a disparity, but we can get into that on another conversation. But just making sure that it's efficient is kind of the way to go.
Absolutely. Well, let's take another break. This is Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. Thank you for tuning in to Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. I'm Sana, and I'm here with Allie Manning, a food scientist and the entrepreneur behind Umami Food Consulting. And of course, we've been talking all about food and food science in its many iterations throughout, I guess, the chain of food or the life cycle of food and food products. And something that you kind of mentioned throughout is how, as consumers, we can educate ourselves. And I'm wondering, what are some key areas as food consumers that we should be more cognizant of, or even if there are specific sources where we can get good information about food?
The internet is filled with so much information. I would actually have to look at a few sites to see what's reputable for the average consumer. I would default to FDA, but I know some folks have issues with that, or USDA.gov. But there are so many sites that have information regarding nutrition and what children should eat and how food affects our planet and things of that nature. So just looking at sites that have factual information is key. Another thing is, I guess, think about what you're consuming. I feel like that's so general, but thinking about the nutritional aspect of what you're consuming. Are you eating all of your colors? Are you eating fruits and veggies? Is it a balanced meal in your household? I think using common sense is kind of the way I would approach education. But also there's so many types of organizations, even local farmers and even some urban farmers, like down at Knowledge Quest. There's an urban farm right in South Memphis. There are farms all around us, and I think asking the right questions will help you understand your community and your food system. Talking to experts like myself, can kind of guide the conversation around food. And even chefs have a great opinion and perspective. So I hope that answers your question, but there's a lot of information out there. It's just important to sift through the noise and focus on what's important to you and your household.
Absolutely. And you mentioned one piece about also thinking about kids and kind of what they might be interested in, or thinking about nutritional value as it pertains to kids' specific needs. And I want to talk about your food science for kids program, because I think this is a great introduction to food science, then also maybe thinking about other aspects of food as well. So could you tell us more about food science for kids?
Yeah, so Food Science for Kids was birthed out of the pandemic. It was an opportunity for me to share what I love. I saw a gap in education around that time when the pandemic first hit. And kids were out of school, parents didn't know what to do, and everybody was talking about pivoting. And so I did a quick survey in my Instagram stories, and I said, does your kid like food? Does your kid like science? And I started class the next week. And so since then, it's a national program. I've taught children ages really 3 through 12. We've got siblings and, cousins involved, but it's so much fun teaching these little ones science as it relates to food. And so we've talked about everything from nutrition to gardening and growing to composting. We've done studies around carbonation and chocolate science, ice cream science. We've done all kinds of experiments and activities. And so when I started back this year, I started with Knowledge Quest and taught ages, well, 3rd through 8th grade. And so that was fun. And then I'll be starting back with Star Academy here in the next few months, doing some in-person learning. So yeah, it's been great teaching these little ones food science.
Mhm. I love that because, I love this just very simple question of like, does your kid like food?
Mhm.
Right? And do they like science? And those seem kind of like no-brainers. But making that relevant to kids' lives, I think is so important because how kids feel about food and also how they feel about science will very much shape their future.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And they've been able to apply so many different things into their own household. So
Mhm. That makes it super fun. So would there ever be food science for adults?
now, adults are challenging, so probably not. I do specialized programs, but I do prefer the little ones. So they're more impressionable. They're very much more impressionable.
Okay, so maybe if you're a parent and your kids are, interested like food and like science, and you can kind of listen in on some lessons, but otherwise you're on your own.
Right. And we do. This is a family fun activity, and parents are always joining us. Even we made bread and muffins and pizzas. So parents have always been somewhere in the room while I'm teaching. So,
Yes, it reminds me of another guest I had who was talking about math. And I know people often have an aversion to math, and sometimes people have an aversion to science as well. But as Dr. Dana Miller Cotto was explaining, everyone is a math person because it's so much of our everyday lives. And I feel that same way about food science and everything you shared with us today. Like all of us are, in some ways, science people. It's impacting our lives, and we're engaging in science, even in ways that we might not kind of call quote unquote science.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. It stems back to societal, like cultural things. It's cooking is a science.
Mhm. Absolutely. And the best science, again, because food. Yeah, I just love food so much. So I'm so excited about, thinking about science. I'm clearly not a food scientist, but there is food science impacting my life. And so this has been such a great conversation to really think about the many ways that all of our lives are impacted by food scientists, right? And
Yes.
thinking again about, all the things that we're consuming as well.
Yes, definitely.
Well, Allie, we are close to the end of our time together. So I want to thank you again so much for spending some of your Monday morning with us. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity if there are any kind of closing words or advice or things that you would like our listeners to know.
Just to close, I think that it's important to enjoy your food in moderation. I think that many times we try to remove everything from our diet and then we begin craving it even more. But if we can enjoy food in moderation, understand the labels, talk to someone, if you need to ask questions, then I think it'll help us to be better food consumers. I think that also it's important on a personal note to carpe diem. That's what I live by, seize every day and enjoy the time that we have because, this has been a really interesting last couple of years. And so I think it's important to do that. And I do that through food. I love food. I'm a foodie. I talk about it all the time on social media. I have a children's book that's coming out soon called Can I Play With My Food? And I'm excited to just share this story, but there's a lot going on my end. And, being able to do meaningful work is really one of my greatest joys. So that's all I've got for today. If you want to know more, follow me, Allie Glad _Carpe Diem on Instagram, or at Umami Food Consulting on Instagram, or check out my website, allie-manning.com or umamifcc.com. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Well, I know we will definitely be looking out for that book, Can I Play With My Food? That is going to be so exciting. Will that book be out maybe later this year, or what are you thinking on the timeline?
I am hoping for a beginning of next year release. I'll be marketing it soon. So this is my first time sharing this on a platform like this. So I've really got to get it done now.
Yes, because we will definitely be looking for that book. I can't wait. Thank you for sharing that with us. And we'll definitely be on the lookout for everything else that you have coming up. So thank you again, Allie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again to Allie Manning, the food scientist and founder of Umami Food Consulting, for joining us this morning. And I love that her parting words were carpe diem, for us to seize the day, especially as it comes to food, but also because carpe diem is really a horticultural metaphor that is more accurately translated as plucking the day versus seize the day, as we often think about it. And so again, just tying in that whole part of food science in the many ways that agriculture, horticulture is implicated in the food products that we eventually end up consuming. So I have learned so much today, and about one of my favorite topics, food, a topic that I'm sure we are all familiar with. But hopefully you can feel encouraged to be educated as consumers, also have a little bit of insight behind the whole process that goes behind the food that eventually ends up on our plates. And so for today's positive note, I will just echo Allie and say carpe diem, especially when it comes to food, the best way to take advantage and enjoy the day. And then I also wanted to leave you with a quote by Alton Brown, who I think a lot of folks might be able to identify as a food sciences. And he said, the kitchen is a laboratory, and everything that happens there has to do with science. It's biology, chemistry, physics. Yes, there's history. Yes, there's artistry. Yes, to all of that. But what happened there, what actually happens to the food, is all science. And I think we've definitely learned that this morning as well. This is Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. I'm Sana, and I can't wait to have you join me back here next Monday morning.